And when he pulled his hand out, it was completely covered in. Oh, you're here already. Good evening, all. Good to see you. Few people in already. How's it going? It is Monday evening. It's been 2 weeks since I was here last. So it's Jim's Monday Malt Samples once again. I hope you can all see me clearly. I hope you can all hear me clearly. If you can't, please let me know. Few people in already. Good to see. Greg's Whiskey Guide from Paris. Good to see you, Greg, as always. Mark Slinger, Whiskey Straight Al. Good to see you, Alan. The Whisky Friend. Good to see you, Alan. Say Mark Slinger, David Owen, Lee J. Brown, Billy Saunders. Good to see you. Whiskey Share Toby. Good to see you. See David O. Stephen A. Chris, last drop. Good to see you all, guys. Really is. Just before we go anywhere, I just want to say, strange times. And I want to sort of mirror what there was a few of us, I know, maybe all of us that are here tonight. We're in Roy's V-pub last night. If not, he was just saying a thank you and whatnot. And I just want to say that I know there's some of you out there, some are here already. We've all been affected by what's going on at the minute, but some of us more directly than others. And I just want to say that I do feel for you. You're in my thoughts. You genuinely are. And so I've actually started. It's a Kilkerran night, and I will get to that. So I'm actually warming up twice tonight. I'm having a double warm up. Sod it. It's Monday evening. So I'm warming up with the 12-year-old, 46%, just to get me started. And as I say, I just want to say that you are all there in my thoughts, and I appreciate you being here. This is for you, guys. Cheers. And not only you, but for everybody working on the front line, everybody in hospitals, all the doctors, nurses, all the people out there helping with what's going on at the minute. Everybody is, to say, struggling in their own way. Some of us more so than others. And just for those out there working, still having to do it, this is for them. Cheers. So, as I said, it's a Kilkerran night for me. Jim's Monday Malt Samples. And as I said, I'm starting off with a 12-year-old. I'm going to be moving on to the 8-year-old batch 3, the 56.5 number. And I know that Kilkerran's maybe not the easiest, especially that 8-year-old. All the 8-year-olds now are starting to get harder to come by. So I'm going to start with the 12, and I'm going to say, I see Chris at the last drop has got the 12 in his hand. Cheers to you, Chris. And the reason I've started with the 12 is, if you can't get hold of the 8, as I say, the 8 is becoming a little harder to get hold of. The 12 is still fairly easy to get, and you can't go wrong with it. So if you're struggling to get hold of one of the new 8-year-olds that've been around a while, I only have that one, the bourbon. That's the bourbon cask finish. And tonight, the samples I will be trying will be the, we'll get to them. So as I say, this is the 12-year-old Kilkerran. And what are we celebrating? Well, we're actually celebrating something as well. We're celebrating being here, but it was Kilkerran's 16th birthday just last week. So Kilkerran are celebrating. So this is to Kilkerran. And see, Paul Gibbs is in. Cheers, Paul. Roy at Aquaviti's in. Good to see you, Roy. So cheers to you all. Here's the 12-year-old. Here's to Kilkerran. It's a fine 12-year-old. It really is. And I see it's starting almost a resurgence a bit. seen it around Europe. An awful lot of people. Is it just being launched? Maybe I missed something. And I was slightly, well, I was more than slightly disappointed to receive an email last week from Springbank saying that they've cancelled my tour in July. I was due to go to Springbank and Kilkerran this July, and they're obviously far enough ahead. They're looking far enough ahead, and they've cancelled my tour. And I'm disgusted and gutted, but you know, as I say, we've all been affected in some ways. What is a tour of a distillery? It's nothing compared to what some people are going through at the minute. So I'll go back. I'll get back another time. Of that, I would say I was going to Scotland. I planned Springbank, Glengyle was booked. Glengyle was booked. I was planning Edredor and maybe Deanston as well. We were going for just over a week, and it's pretty much all fallen through. The holiday itself hasn't been cancelled yet, but it's looking pretty sure, isn't it? You know, time ain't getting any shorter. That's just getting closer, and it's sure to happen. So we'll have our Kilkerran night tonight, and I've also got something for you to think about while we move along here. I've got a question for you, because there's going to be a whiskey in one of these Kilkerran samples I hold out a lot of hope for, and it is the Oloroso matured. And the reason I hold out a lot of hope for that is it's basically in my favorite style of whiskey, which is peated malt finished in sherry, or matured in sherry casks. I would still say that my favorite whiskey, and you're looking at a blend here, okay? So, you know, but take that off the table, is the Douglas Lang Rock Oyster Cask Strength. Now, this is the batch 1 I have here, but the batch 2 I gave 10 out of 10 when I reviewed it. That good to me is that whiskey. And you're looking at a mixture of the islands, the Taliskers and Orkneys and stuff in that blend. So it is a blend, but I still think you're looking at peated malts, in this case blended, vatted, and finished. I can't see as how they've maybe got the balance. They've blended it after it's been vatted. Not 100% sure, but it's just a genuinely mouth-watering, luscious whiskey that I can't say enough about, you know, and it's, so I like peated malt matured in sherry cask. So my question to you is, if you could only have one style of whiskey, let's say you could only make one style of whiskey, and this was for you, this was to your taste and your taste only, what would it be? You know, and the world, it's an wide open question. Bourbon, rye, you know, Irish, anything. Just one style of whiskey that you could have. So say for me, peated malt in sherry finish. There you go. And Alan the Whisky Friend is straight in already. That was the wrong one. Sorry about that. Saying sherry. So just, is this full sherry matured, I would imagine, Alan, you're talking, because he's put it in capital letters. Capital. No, he means what he's talking about here. So yeah, that's the question. Roy, refill. Right, BBHH. So just right. I'm sure I'm missing something there, because I'm trying to think. and and trying to figure out what that abbreviation means at the same time. Somebody will tell me. I know they will. I feel stupid here because I should know what that means. Bourbon barrel hogshead. Of course it does. Steve A with the answer. And actually, I'm surprised at that. But then I'm and I'm not. So so I'm going to actually ask then, Roy, for an example of maybe not necessarily your favorite matured in bourbon hogshead, but certainly an example. And I've seen another one here. Chris also likes the peated sherry mix. As I say, there's just something mouth-watering about it, and this is why I imagine this Oloroso finish is Oloroso mature is going to be a doozy. The feed keeps moving so fast that I'm just, oh man, you guys. So we're sorted. Lunaran, good to see you, Luna. Anyway, I'm going to move on to something bigger and better. A Knox 16 Daft Mill. So there's a couple of good examples from Roy. Haven't actually had either. I've had my Knox. Haven't had Daft Mill yet. Getting incredibly hard to get hold of. So I'm moving on just to the 8-year-old, just because I fancy something with a bit more. 12-year-old's good, no denying it. I just fancy something with a bit more meat in the bone. So the 8-year-old, 56.5, as I say, I think this was the batch 3 Kilkerran bourbon matured. And I think I'm going to have to let a little air get to that. Because I've had these capped. I've had them poured but capped. And I think sometimes it just needs some, well, we all know it just needs some air. Luna Aran has hugs for us all. Cheers, Luna. Thank you. What a great community this is. Greg said the problem is we create it, select it, blend it, or just pick it on a shelf. And I have to agree. That's a good question. This is for you, Greg. Let's just say this is for yourself. You're making it to your style, and I know you like to blend. For you, to your palate. Because I know certainly your palate is wide and varied. This is still the 12-year-old actually I'm sipping at here because I'm still letting a little air get to that 8-year-old. Paul Gibbs is saying he loves the Deanston 18 Old Bourbon Maturation. I have a sample of that Deanston 18 Summer, which will be hitting these screens soon. I received a fine selection of Deanstons from Malcolm Douglas recently, and yes, I will be featuring a Deanston night, samples of Deanston, because I have the Deanston 12. I'm sure I've had other Deanstons before, because I certainly know I've had samples shared to me. But I'm looking forward Malcolm has sent me a lot of odd finished Deanstons, so I'm looking forward to trying that. Now the 8-year-old is starting to open up a little. Might actually add just a touch of water to try and get it to open a bit quicker. There's not an awful lot in the glass, so I'll not add a lot of water either. I hope you're all doing well through this mayhem. I mean, we will come out the other side of it. McCallum, fine and rare, the doc is in. Good to see you, my friend. Yeah, that just took very little water, and all of a sudden now that's started to open up. As I say, this is the 8-year-old cask strength Kilkerran, batch 3, and it just massive. I just think it's just massive. It's right up there. I think whenever I described it in my review of it, I think I maybe said that there's a fizzy, almost a fizzy lemonade thing of it, or just lemonade, citrus hit and full volume. But here it does it again. It's that palate, which to me starts huge, fills all round, and then goes very, very cereal, very cereal at the back. Yeah. Yeah. This is great stuff. Luna Orange sent a beginning, certainly I would suggest that most of us, I like to have a go at blending every now and again. I recently took a Berry Brothers and Rudd Isla. So it was already a blend, an independently bottled blend, but and yet again it was trying to replicate the peated thing with the sherry thing. So I mixed it, blended it 2/3 of, and strangely, I actually went the reverse of almost what you would think. I went 2/3 with the peated whiskey, and 1/3 Aberlour Abuna, because it's quite the Berry Brothers and Rudd is quite a thin peated whiskey. This one that I had, there wasn't a lot of, the peat wasn't massive with it, so it held enough that when I added the Abuna to it, because it's cask strength, full volume there, the sherry did balance out the peat quite well. It wasn't brilliant. It wasn't bad, but it's certainly where I've tried. This is one that I keep trying to do, is get that balance of, say, because my favorite way would be peat matured in sherry. If I could recreate that with a peated whiskey blended with a full sherry maturation. Haven't hit the nail just right in the head yet, but I'm getting there. Even to be bourbon cask matured, there's a great, as I say, that cereal thing really just works really well for me. I haven't really heard an awful lot of others mention it. It must just be something that I'm getting, but Mark Slinger saying that the Heavy Peated is his favourite. I will be on the Heavy Peated later. Just want to work my way up. So start with the bourbon matured, and then I'll go into the sherry before finishing with the peated. I have actually cheated with the peated. See what I did there? Because Roy at Aquaviti sent me a sample of it at one point as well. And I was that keen to get at it that I had to open it. Now, I must admit, as much as I cheated, it was quite a while ago, and I had actually had a few that night, and I was just mad keen to try this heavily peated Kilkerran. So I went ahead and opened it, tried it. Didn't probably give it the credit it deserved because as I say, I'd already had a few in me. But I'm looking forward now to actually trying this tonight, almost with new eyes or new palate, fresh palate, certainly. Stephen Davidson's in. Good to see you, my friend. So that is the 8-year-old. I'm actually quite silly because I've been sitting here with this in front of me. Now, this from Alan The Whisky Friend, as you can see. The pleasure is indeed in the sharing, Alan. Thank you, my friend. 57.1%, if you can see that. This is something that confused me. Now, I know you're all very, very clever people in here. Very whiskey orientated. You know your stuff. But when I got this, when I looked at these at first, and yet again, Roy mentioned this in his VPub last night, and it was the 8-year-old at the time. He was polishing off a bottle. There's no explanation. That's just a frog in my throat. I'm fine. Trust me, I'm fine. There is nothing on this bottle to suggest what it was matured in. Nothing. Matured in oak. I would guarantee that the 12-year-old, yeah, and I'm correct, is also matured in oak. And I don't have any money currently to bet, but I'm sure somebody out there could tell me. Probably, well, most of you probably have it, but Alan, the Whisky Friend, saying as this came from your bottle, you can tell me, does the Oloroso matured bottle say any different? Because this is what really, really confused me at the time. Whenever I started to do my my review on the Kilkerran 8-year-old, the bourbon cask matured, pardon me, I thought, this is it, plain and simple. Pardon me. And then it all got a little confusing because I then discovered that there was the Oloroso one. Now, okay, the heavily peated does say heavily peated on it, but the fact that it doesn't say, it just completely confused me, and it was only the fact that it was this color that led me to understand that I was looking at two different whiskies between this and this, because both bottles, to my knowledge, look very similar. One's matured in an Oloroso cask, the other matured in bourbon. So obviously you're looking at two totally different whiskies. This, as I say, is still the 8-year-old bourbon. And for the first time, I'm going to actually get my nose into this 8-year-old Sherry Cask, Oloroso cask, which on initial contact is quite tight, which I'm surprised at. I thought that would have just been, yeah. So Alan is saying it just says matured in oak, the same as the bourbon, which just why? You know, I asked the question of Kilkerran, why not explain what it's. I would be of the thinking that your casual whiskey drinker, and I have to be careful what I'm saying here, but I would be of the thinking that your casual whiskey drinker, and I'm thinking I've got friends who are casual, what I would consider casual whiskey drinkers. They buy a bottle. I used to be what I would consider a casual whiskey drinker. You buy a bottle, you drink that bottle over a period of time. For myself, I liked my bourbon. I would have bought a bottle of bourbon and it would have lasted me 2 months. And when I came home from work of the evening, I would have poured a glass, and it would have been like a rocks glass or tumbler, something, and I would have poured myself a measure and sat and sipped it. And that was the way I drank whiskey. And I would have considered myself a casual whiskey drinker. I don't think the casual whiskey drinker is buying this. I think it's us that's buying this. Those who want more from their whiskey. If everybody was buying this, it wouldn't last long at all. It lasts precious little time as is. It would last a hell of a lot less time if everybody was buying it. So I think it's about time Kilkerran started to just offer a bit more to us who want to know what we're drinking. It's not much to ask. Just to say aged in oak is rubbish, isn't it, really? Yeah, and as Lunaran says, this is, you know, they're very limited release of all these things. And understand it's a small distillery. They're still in their formative years. They're only, to say, they turned 16 last year. So they're, you know, but I just think, as I say, just put something different on the Oloroso matured bottle from the bourbon cask matured. Wouldn't take much. Now it's come to life. And it's strange because this is the bourbon cask straight away peels. This is great whiskey to me. I when I was rating, I've stopped rating whiskey for now. But when I was rating it, this bourbon cask one got a 9.5 out of 10 for me, and I meant it, and I stick by it. But the Oloroso just jumps straight out of the glass. Greg has just come up with a very good point, actually. I wonder also if there isn't any additional tax starting when a distillery bottles 10,000 bottles instead of 9,999. That could explain the number of bottles from Springbank and Kilkerran. Who knows? It's a good question. Anybody out there willing to give us, or who knows and is fit to give us an answer to that, I would certainly like to hear. Yet again, this is something, and it's a question that I'm sort of wanting to hold for another night, but that's a prime example of it for me. And it's this, I've heard Whiskey Jason raise questions, a comment on one of his videos recently, and I'm not going to even say the question that he came up with, but it was a very, very good hypothetical question regarding whiskey. And what I love about questions like what Greg just put out there is that there's questions that we can't answer. We don't know. And probably people working in the distillery and the whiskey business, they, because each is different. So good questions. Glengyle is understaffed and only runs week-long campaigns, if I can remember correctly. Might have changed in the meantime, given the interest in Kilkerran's. Yes, Doc, I've heard that. And yeah, I think a lot of these smaller distilleries, this is the way they run. And this is why the production's low. It's totally understandable. But still, to me, doesn't forgive putting the same label on two different, completely different styles of whiskey. Now, this Oloroso, and as you can see, I generally would probably have emptied that very quickly tonight in the Glencairn, or any night, but I really want to make this one last me. On the nose, it's something that, yet again, I find with peated, finished in, or matured in sherry. Furniture polish. Mr. Sheen comes to mind. Those in the UK will know, they'll know that he keeps everything clean. It's in the background of it. It's a great balance in here because it's not on the nose. I wouldn't suggest it's a sherry bomb straight off, for the simple fact that it is better balanced than that. Very, very nice. Luna, I read this a second ago, Luna, and I think you could be onto something. I totally agree. Do all Mitchell products only say aged in oak so they can change their recipe according to availability of casks and certain age? Makes sense. Yet again, probably one of those hypothetical questions that it's got body behind it, it's got sense behind it. Yes, probably a very good point. And there is a good reason why they would say that. They don't know how many of a line they're putting out, how many bottles at a time. I still think it just relies on us to figure out what the hell's going on in the background. Alan, the Whisky Friend, is saying that the work in progress ones, if you haven't seen them, they come in like a pale blue. There's a pink tin and label, but they do state sherry and bourbon. I actually, yet again, have a sample of one of them here somewhere, and it will get hit some night. I'm looking forward to it because I've never actually tried any of the work in progress stuff. So on the palate, this is the Oloroso matured. Oh, yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you for that, Alan, the Whisky Friend. That's pretty incredible stuff. It's quite sharp initially. Here it comes. Are you waiting for, my friend? Yeah. Strange, actually, because what it doesn't do, Radek said, sorry, Radek asks, if Roy's stream we are barflies, how are we calling us here? Ooh, there's a question. There you are. Everybody in that's here tonight in Jim's Monday Malt Samples, give this group a name, and we'll pick one, shall we, for the crack? I mean, we are still, yes, we are. I mean, we're still barflies because we're still Roy's barflies first and foremost. But I suppose when Roy's not looking, although he might still be looking, so just be careful. Guitar flies. Here. It doesn't take long. Doc. I do like that. Guitar flies. I'm gonna have to now the problem is Paul Gibbs saying beard flies, and there's a reason why he's saying beard flies. Because if you'd seen Paul Gibbs, well, you can get a rough idea of what he looks like there. Him and I are of the hairy persuasion. Sorry, yes, Alan, the whiskey friend, has said something here, and yes, 100%, Alan, 100%, my friend. I didn't actually take that into consideration straight away. It is only 8 years old. For an 8-year-old, for this to have only spent 8 years in an Oloroso cask, yet again, I think this is something you're looking at with Kilkerran, Springbank, distilleries like that. It's cask quality, isn't it? And I think it's something that you do get with them. I'm just writing down guitar flies and beard flies because otherwise I will forget. Keep them coming. But yeah, I think cask quality and good cask quality plays into this an awful lot. I mean, and yet again, a good spirit in the first place. There's a quality. That's quality new make spirit, I would suggest. And it's not an awful lot to ask, is it? For quality new make spirit to go in to good casks. Okay, cask quality is slipping because good casks, are becoming harder to get. But this I would recommend to everyone. Yet again, as he said it, as Alan said, who gave me this sample, it is only 8 years old. Any sherried whiskey I've had, any sherry cask strength matured, and I'm thinking along the lines of that rock oyster blend, your abunas, your maduras, stuff like that. I find mouth-watering. This is actually this is weird because it does the same things. It comes in initially, it's got the same feel, the same draw. It's quite light in that it's not terribly oily, which is no bad thing. But It's quite dry, which is I just find strange for a sherry matured, full sherry matured. Okay, only 8 years. Gets richer and richer as it goes along. Now, there's a reason, yet again, why I didn't pour an awful lot of that into the glass, and it's because of this. It's because I'm going to put more in the glass now because it's Monday night. I'm here to enjoy myself. Still haven't drained it. I would say, generally, I would say I was keeping some for the wife, but I'm going to drink all this one myself. But certainly a fine dram. Very hard to get hold of now. The price has just rocketed on this pretty quick. Stewie Baby's in. Good to see you. James Burgoyne, good to see you. So, it's keeping track of what I had and what. Yes, the 12 is finished. Still, we dropped the 8. We'll go back to that later. Keep the Oloroso there with Roy's Coin on top. And I'm going to move on to the Heavily Peated. This one from Chris, the last drop. And this was batch 2, 60.9%. And as I say, I have, yet again, not all in the glass because although it's quite a healthy measure, and as I say, I've had this before, but I don't really remember it because it just literally it was a dram that Roy gave me, a sample that Roy gave me, and the circumstances were different. I had a couple of drinks before it. It was a build up to it. And okay, I've had a couple of drinks here tonight, but this is just straight in on the nose. For this to be the Heavily Peated Kilkerran, toffee, real toffee. This would be one that I would want to try in a blend. I hope that's probably sacrilege to say that, in fairness, that I would want to blend that. But there's just something in that is so toffee, and it's almost back to one that I mentioned 2 weeks ago, Caramac. And as Toby from Whiskey shared, and I discovered, I think it was somebody else discovered, Caramac ain't what it used to be. It's just gone the way of white chocolate now, really. But there's a Caramac thing off this, as I remember it. Rich toffee, salted. That's almost a salted caramel thing. But there's also a. This is, as I say, this is the first time I'll not be reviewing this anytime soon because I don't have a bottle of it, and I don't like to review the samples because I don't think I get enough out of a sample to give a good full review on it. But the initial thing on that is bacon, salted caramel. To me, very, very nice. Quite spirity. Toby, my friend, To be honest, I persevered and ate 3 out of the 4, and I think the wife ate the other one, and she totally agreed that it's not what it used to be. Now, this, as I say, salted caramel, I suppose, would be the way I would describe the what Carmack used to do, but this it ain't anymore. Good to hear Greg saying that. It's not sacrilege to be wanting to blend something like this. And Springbank is used for blended whiskey sometimes. Fantastic whiskey. See, this is it. This is my point. Ralphie has always said it, and I like this ethos that if it's good malt whiskey and you blend it with good malt whiskey, the result will be good malt whiskey, a good blended malt. Even if it's good grain, good, you'll get a good blended, so this is, I'm glad you actually backed me up there, because I did feel like as if I was sort of letting the side down a little to doing that. Greg is also asking, he says, I don't know what Carmack is or tastes like. As I said, Greg, it's sort of salted caramel. I am really, really sorry that I sent Greg a parcel to France. Luna Aaron can back me up here, because I sent her much the same, in that I sent them both sweets. Or if you're the other side if you're watching this and you're the other side of the Atlantic, candies from here, from the UK, Ireland, I suppose you'd say, that it's ones that we're used to. Pear drops. I can't remember what else it sent. And I sent the same to Greg. Hopefully he will receive this parcel at some point. Because we fire out flavors and tastes, and I'm sure the same happens elsewhere in the world. Once again, I'm not sick. But yeah, we fire out these flavors that we know, and they're not always well known around the world. Luna's saying, I had cola cubes and and I'm sure there's probably nobody here from the UK that's in the live chat tonight that doesn't know what cola cubes are or what they taste like. And it's just something that we fire out there, thinking that people know what we mean. In the same way that Ralphie names herbs and spices and all, which we all have heard of, but right, on the nose. Love this. Meaty bacon. As I said, salted caramel. Oh, awesome. Alan says it's pineapple cube, man. Yep, totally agree. I sent him some pineapple cubes as well. Chris, last drop. You're a star, my friend. It brings lots and lots. And you know what I might try? Not here, not now, but I'll certainly let you know. Here's the question. Here's a question then, Greg. I wonder, has anybody tried this? Blending the Oloroso mature with the heavily peated. You're still obviously looking at a single malt. And I just wonder what that would be like. I'm sure, well, I know for a fact that there are others here in the chat who have had this And I would be interested to know your thoughts on it, on the heavily peated. Do any of the rest of you get that bacon and almost salted caramel thing? Now this is this what I would consider more mouth-watering. It's causing me to salivate. I'm also interested to try. Alan mentioned the work in progress Kilkerrans. I'm interested to try them because, yet again, you're looking at these maturations, but bottled at 46%, I believe. Alan, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they put them out at 46%. Chris, you haven't disappointed me this week. Chris, when he sent me this sample, I've had these for quite a while. He also sent me a cognac, which I found very pleasant. Certainly wouldn't be off the idea of going down the cognac path a little further. I haven't actually looked at rum yet. I was never a massive fan of rums back in the day. So now that my palate has changed a little, maybe. So Alan says there was a green bourbon. That was the green tin. It was at 54.1%, but the rest were all 46. I knew it was something. But yes, certainly cognac, I would definitely go back to. The thing I found about the cognac was nice, big, volume, fruity, sweet. Doesn't have the depth of finish that any whiskey I've had. It just, the finish is like that, dries up and it's gone. But that was only one, so I'm not going to obviously put them down, put cognac away for that reason. But certainly, yes, I would like to try other spirits. I've always been a bit of a fan of a gin whenever the sun comes out again. So I'll maybe go down the path of a few gins from now and again. I am certainly very tempted to try blending what I have left in these two bottles of the heavily peated. And there's quite a bit left in that, so I might actually try halving that between a glass of the heavily peated, what's left in the heavily peated, and maybe try one of the 12 or the 8-year-old, sorry. Maybe go with half and half. But this heavily peated is awesome. You know what? I really don't want them. I don't want to waste them. And I don't want to. We're live, remember. We are live. That was the Oloroso. So I've still left myself some to play with. This is the heavily peated. No, Luna. Just before I went on air, let me. I love my wife. Don't get me wrong. I love her with all my heart. But just before I went on, she walked past me with my bottle of Longrow, and I said, "That's peated. Are you sure you want to?" She quite likes a wee dram, and especially whenever I'm, if I'm doing this or doing something else, she'd maybe sit and have just one or two wee drams, and she walked past me with my bottle of Longrow, and I says, "That's peated. Are you sure you want to start with that?" And she just went, "Well, it'll last me longer." So these are for me, Luna. I do. I love her, but in this case, I'm being selfish. They're for me. Right. Yes, I'm going to do it. So, Alan, bit at a time. What way would you go first? Now, there's, I would say, roughly the same amount in each. So, what do we think, ladies and gentlemen? Half of the peat into the Oloroso, I would suggest. And now that I've went back to that Oloroso after the peat, I've got to give this to Kilkerran. And I think most of us would say the same. You finish with peated whiskey. You you don't overdo it. So so little peat into the sherry. Irish whiskey, do people use the wee in Northern Ireland as well? Yes, Doc, very much so. As a matter of fact, probably came from here first. I don't know. What we speak and what the language generally is a colloquialism, but what we're generally said to speak in Northern Ireland is Ulster Scots, what they call Ulster Scots. So really, you're looking at we use an awful lot of the same words, an awful lot of the same language. That was the end of the 12. See, everybody's throwing out different. Everybody's throwing out different things now. So it is a bit of an experiment. I've got an extra Glencairn. Luna says, "Wee wains in Derry." The poor wee wains in Derry. Aye, that's the sort of stuff we're talking about. So, tell you what I'm going to do. This is an extra Glencairn. I haven't got a lot. Well, I'll tell you. No, here's what I'm going to do. Oh, man. Making it up as I go along. Wrecking the joint and everything. That is a little drop of the bourbon matured, right? It's all going on now. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to split, really making this up as I go along. I'm going to put a little drop of the Oloroso. Now, remembering what the hell these are is going to be a challenge. I'm going to put, that's the Oloroso, and I'm going to just, that amount, very, very little. I hope you've seen what I put in there. Ooh. Ooh. There's the what's left of the heavily peated. So I'm going to set that to one side. I don't want to blend anything into that, obviously. It's good to see Whiskey Straight Al here. Whiskey Straight Al, good friend of mine from Northern Ireland. Many's a time, went out for a wee drink, come home pissed. Now, there's a Northern Ireland saying for you. And you'll hear that one in Scotland as well. It's something, as I say, our language is very, very similar. So this, that's the one with the peated, the wee drop of peated in it. There's that word again. And that is the Oloroso on the bourbon matured. Greg asking a good question. No, pissed means very drunk. It just means that you are well and truly beyond. And you can actually go one further and say the year's pissed as a fart. There you go. If you really want to be beyond it. Yeah. Very little in that of the. I think it's all going to come out in the palate because the nose. Okay, and here's another Northern Ireland ism that, and I don't know if this one even made it to Scotland, but whiskey straight Alan will know this. Brown lemonade. Yes. We had a thing that was brown lemonade. It was the same as white lemonade that you would buy, like 7-Up, etc. It tasted much the same, but one was brown. I'm sure there was a reason why. Caramelized sugar or something. But this smells like brown lemonade. To me, there's a hint of brown lemonade, which I do find on some sherry matured. Because it's certainly the sherry. This was the one with the hint of peat added to it. This is the one with the bourbon, and it's the sherry is taking control. But then I maybe didn't put an awful lot of the peat into it. But the bourbon, it's weird. The bourbon is actually the one taking control. And sorry, I want to throw this up. Brown lemonade, put vodka in this neck of the woods. It's known as a lollipop. And I'll tell you one better than that, Alan. I remember a friend actually going into a bar in England, and it was something that we used to do because it was just something you did. If you drank white, if white lemonade was your mixer of choice, you asked for, say, a vodka and white. So I remember a friend of mine, we were in England at a party, and he asked the barman for a vodka and white, and the barman asked, white what? And my friend said white lemonade, and he said, why, what other color is there? Brown. So there you go. But it didn't leave Northern Ireland or Ireland, that thing. So yes, the sherry takes control with the peat, which is no bad thing. Subtle. Sherry still dominant, but it's weird because you can feel that there's a level of something else underneath that wasn't there before. So that's obviously the peat. That's better. That's better there. That was the bourbon matured with a hint of the Oloroso added, and it is better. Not only is it better as a, I'm not saying it's better as a whiskey. I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying it's better than what it was. It's not better than the sum of its parts. They're all very good in their own way and I wouldn't change that. But it's better than this because the bourbon matured once the other one out better. Yeah. Yeah, no, I would certainly say that this is the better of the two. Although, when you go with this first, this is then better. What do we do to finish off? I'm not even going to ask this time, just sort it. So really now, really, really now, what have we got? A mess. But a very, very pleasant mess. I'm sure somebody at Kilkerran's tried this before. I certainly hadn't intended doing this with it, but you don't know unless you try. It gives it slightly, there's strange now. There's a there's a slight vegetative feel about it. No, Alan, I'm not. I'm not seriously. It's totally different. It's weird because it does not taste in any way like any of its individual parts. Bizarrely, the nose softens up. It rounds the edges off a little. Very nice. That brown lemonade I mentioned is actually there in the palate as well. Honestly, would I recommend it? No, I wouldn't. It's not. It's not great. There's a reason why that is not a blend. It's got a big, like myself, nose. It's got things going. It's got volume. It's got, but it just doesn't work. No, I'll not. I'll certainly not be binning this. I'll finish it. But speaking of finishes, it's the finish that kills it. Strangely, it's the finish just is not pleasant. Everything else about it's good. Nose is good. Palate's good. But it's the finish that just lets that down. If anybody that is just joining in or is watching this the rerun, and you just flag straight to the end, what I ended up doing there was blending a little bit of Kilkerran Oloroso, a little bit of Kilkerran Heavily Peated, and we ended up with a glass with a little bit of the Kilkerran 8-year-old bourbon cask in it as well. And it's this. Anybody want to come up with a name for it? I could think of a few, and they wouldn't be very pleasant. See, there's a good point, because Alan suggested I actually do have an infinity bottle, and would you believe the one ruined it for me, and it was an Irish one, Glengyle, the 7-year-old porter finished Glengyle, ruined it. I put too much in it, and it's not something that I visit very often. But I think where I finished it, if it was gone, that might not be a bad idea for the remains of samples. You know, if I was left with the likes of this, maybe start again. Not with those, because those I'm going to enjoy on my own. As I said, just myself. Right, I'm going to hit you with one more question before I go. And it's not my question. It is that of Gregoire. If a whiskey isn't great, it will ruin your blend. I did experiment. Well, that wasn't a question. It's more of a statement. And this is back to the point that I just said there about that Glengyle 7-year-old porter finish that I pretty much killed and it's a lot of whiskey, and it's a lot of money. You know, even you're putting that amount into an infinity bottle and adding it up and multiplying it by just keeping adding in 1 cl. Even 1 cl can kill it, ruin it for you. It's something that I think it's experimentation. Of course it is. So as experimentation, you don't learn unless you try, and it's too late, isn't it? Once you've put that 1 cl in to kill it, what do? Tough. Well, I suppose you could probably keep adding, drink a bit out, add a bit in, see what you can do to try and bring it back. You know, and actually to add to it, there's another one from Alan. If your whiskey is not great, can you finish it to make it better? Well, do you mean by buying a cask, Alan? A small cask? Is that what you mean? And finishing it in your own way, adding it to something to try and, I don't know. It's one of those things. Infinity bottles, as I say, I have one. I would like to do another one. At the minute, the way things stand, I will just be slowly enjoying what I have, not mixing it with anything else. This is further than I went for a long time. This isn't bad, as I say, but just it's the finish is weird. It's not very pleasant on the finish. But look, that's almost an hour and 15 minutes. I don't like these to run on too long because, spend time with my family as well, etc., as most of us, I'm sure, do right now. And I'm going to wrap it up by saying, think about your style of whiskey, what you would like, what you would consider your style of whiskey. As I say, mine would be peated, matured in sherry cask, certainly. What else did we learn tonight? Mixing 3 Kilkerrans together doesn't necessarily work. It's good stuff, but altogether it's not better than some of its parts. What are we going to be called from now on? This should take on a new look. This should be going here, this bit. Hopefully you will see my by the next time I'm back. I'll be back 2 weeks again, and hopefully next time I will have moved on a little bit. I will let you know what my samples will be ahead of time, And I think, as suggested by Macallan Fine and Rare, the doc, guitar flies. I'm going to call you my guitar flies. And if anybody's see, Chris has went with it already. Brilliant, Chris. Appreciate it, mate. And look, I appreciate the sample. I really do. And Alan, also, I appreciate this. I appreciate anybody sharing samples that, I know it's just it's a personal thing, etc. But it's what we do. It's what we enjoy, isn't it? And we will be back. My guitar flies in 2 weeks' time. I really enjoyed that tonight. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you all for being here. It was different. I didn't expect to blend this, but as I say, you never know. There might be something that'll happen again in the future, but you don't know unless you try. Thank you again for you lot for being here. Strange times, weird things happening in the world. Here's to everybody out there. Let's just keep going. We'll all meet up again. We'll all meet at some point, I hope. Doc has asked me in the past to be it if I was going to be at things, and I had hoped to be, and just now everything's just changed, hasn't it, for now? But this will all change back. Keep safe. Stay home if you can. Here's to your good health. Cheers.